You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
One of the most disgusting demonstrations in my entire career.
We got the worst group of seniors right now that I've ever been associated with.
Okay, another episode of The Right Call, and I'm joined by my partner in crime, Ryan Goldney, and man, we are so fired up for football season. I mean, Ryan, I know we're huge fantasy football guys, but we're like, what, 4+ days away from seeing Tampa Bay Dallas on Thursday night? Like, how excited are you?
I'm super excited. I've been waiting for this day for so long. I know that the whole summer I've been kind of prepping for fantasy football, but counting down the days to watch this new Patriots team. So I'm definitely looking forward to it.
So Ryan, let's start with this. I haven't really heard a lot of media outlets talking about, so this is why I want to start with it. This is a huge year for Bill Belichick. So last year, Tom Brady wins a Super Bowl without Bill Belichick. People are all over Belichick. Why'd you let Brady go? Cam Newton sucks. And everybody's all over the guy. And all we kept hearing last season was they're trying to free up money. They're trying to take that as kind of a bridge year. They didn't have enough to win last year anyway. And in fairness, Belichick went out and spent $160 million on free agents this offseason. But Ryan, I want to start there because I feel like Bill Belichick is already considered the greatest coach of all time. As far as a GM goes, it depends which year. Like, his GM skills don't necessarily always match his coach skills. But what I want to ask you from a legacy perspective, from a you had to have Tom Brady to win perspective, based on the money he spent and the comments Robert Kraft has made, based on picking Mac Jones and making sure he picked the right quarterback, I think Belichick as the GM has a tremendous amount of pressure this season.
Yeah, I think the jury's still out on Bill Belichick as the GM. I haven't been super impressed with any of the moves that he's made over the years. He's always struggled with wide receiver position. Just hasn't been able to really hit that draft pick. And if we go back and look at DK Metcalf being there, taking the wide receiver that they took from Arizona State, just hasn't been the best of times for Bill Belichick as the GM. Now, as the head coach, that's a totally different argument because Bill Belichick, to me, I think is the best coach of all time.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, people can say, well, he's nothing without Brady, and people can say Brady was nothing without Belichick. I mean, the argument goes both ways, but I think this year definitely is a big year for Belichick because, again, we are playing Brady on week 4. So I'm very interested to see what Belichick has prepared for Brady and what type of defense he's going to throw at them. And I want to see how Brady reacts against a Belichick-led defense. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Well, and I actually think this is the defining year of Bill Belichick's reputation as a GM because he had to pick a new quarterback. He could have traded up. And don't get me wrong, I like Mac Jones. I'm not complaining, but he could have traded up. He chose not to. And because he invested all that money in free agency. So I tell you what, if this year doesn't unfold with the free agents, and by the way, we can get into the Cam Newton, Mac Jones segue here. By the way, the thing I want to say about Mac Jones before we talk about Cam Newton, Ryan, here's the thing about Mac Jones. The Patriots, Bill Belichick, if you read the book, the 500-page book, Dynasty, one of the things that was clear if you read that book is that Belichick sees the quarterback position as, we're going to call it like the Alex Smith position. He sees the quarterback as being high IQ, makes good throws, doesn't make mistakes. Now, I'm simplifying it for the purpose of time. So with Mac Jones, that's what he's ultimately looking for Mac Jones to do. He doesn't need to be the next Tom Brady. He's not going to be the next Tom Brady. But for me, that's what it comes down to, Ryan. When people talk about his development this year, I don't care if the Patriots go 7-10. But if you and I are looking at each other at the end of this season going, Mac Jones is our guy, that's the biggest thing for this year. Agreed?
I agree. And the Patriots have had a tough time developing players that they've drafted in the draft, from defensive players that obviously have blown ACLs, just haven't been able to get over the injury bug. But I think this is the time to really see what the Patriots can do with Mac Jones. And I think Mac Jones is NFL ready. I really do. I think he's smart. He comes from a program, Alabama, that's, produces so many NFL players. So Nick Saban is very similar to Bill Belichick in, type of coaches they are. So I think this is a great, I just think this is a great, spot for Mac Jones to be able to have success with the Patriots. But again, there's going to have to be some patience with Mac Jones. He's not going to be Patrick Mahomes coming in slinging, 40 touchdowns this year. There's going to be some good spots. There's going to be some bad spots. So Patriots fans need to be patient with Mac Jones this year. But I definitely are very thrilled with the fact that they're going with their young first-round pick rather than just continuing to. It's been painful, Mark, with Cam Newton. I mean, he's had in 15 games, he's had 8 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. I mean, remember the Buffalo game last year? They were on the Buffalo 20-yard line.
That was the game where Cam Newton lost all Patriots fans. That was the game. That was the game.
So I think that Mac Jones is going to perform better than Cam Newton. So that's what I'm looking forward to this year. But there are going to be some, good spots and bad spots. So you have to be patient with him this year.
Yeah, a couple of things, Ryan, on what you said. First, as far as Cam Newton goes, I was thinking about what the eulogy of Cam Newton's tenure would be with the Patriots, and I looked before the show. They only really owe him $3.5 million from releasing him, and I also found out that if he signs with another team, some of that gets deferred, so they wouldn't even be charged for it on the cap. So that's good news. I like the idea. I equate it not in the same level. Before anybody yells at me. When the Patriots acquired Kyrie Irving, or Celtics acquired Kyrie Irving, I was excited, loved it. When the Celtics acquired Kemba Walker, I was excited, loved it. Didn't work out either time. When the Patriots got Cam Newton for $1 million last season, there was no Patriot fan, and you're lying if you say otherwise, knowing it was Jarrett Stidham or bust, you were thrilled that they got him as a flyer for $1 million, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when Brady left, it was definitely a blow for Patriots fans. I know I was disappointed because you're so conditioned to watching Brady play every year. And so once he left, you said to yourself, can we just find any type of quarterback we looked at Andy Dalton and Cam Newton and all these other guys that we were bringing up. So Cam Newton had so much success back in the day with Carolina, right? With the rushing touchdowns and going to the Super Bowl and just pulling the Superman, cape thing off his chest. And everybody just reminisces back to those days when Cam Newton was such a phenomenal quarterback. So that's what everybody's mindset was. Okay, we're getting the old Cam Newton. And realistically, you weren't. You were just kind of getting a guy that's just trying to make a name for himself back in the league. And
hang on.
Unfortunately, I feel like, Mark, that last Super Bowl against Denver really changed him. I don't know what happened and what Denver did to him in that game. We watched the game. The defense was unbelievable that year. We lost to Denver in the AFC Championship. But whatever they did to him in that game, that last sack he took when he fumbled, he was just never the same. And to this day, I feel like that game really changed who he was as Cam Newton. And obviously injuries took a large toll on him with his shoulder, and his throwing mechanics have just never been the same since that injury.
Yeah, and I'd like a side note to a quick digression here. The 2 Super Bowls Peyton Manning won against the Rex Grossman-led Chicago Bears and that Carolina team were 2 of the worst Super Bowl entry teams that I can remember. No, not to take anything away, but that was ridiculous. Now, Ryan, I want to segue. We're talking about personnel decisions and Cam Newton and Mac Jones, and let's talk about the running backs, and let's start out with Sony Michel. Now, when the Patriots drafted Sony Michel in the first round, I have to say I was really surprised because in the same way as you alluded to, Belichick has done a horrendous job identifying receivers. He's done an amazing job over the years identifying running backs, and he hasn't taken high running back draft picks. So here he goes out of the norm, takes Sony Michel in the first round. Just an absolute failure. There's no other way to say it. Now, I give him credit for getting a 5th and 6th round draft pick that could turn into a 4th because, frankly, they weren't keeping him. They had so many running backs, and the Rams luckily were desperate because of the Cam Akers injury. But, in looking at the running backs this season, Ryan, here's my question. You got 4 guys, right? You've got James White, your pass-catching back. You've got J.J. Taylor, your Darren Sproles type back. You've got Ramondre Stevenson, who looks like, and I know you're a fan, you're going to talk about that, 3rd-round pick, looked really good in the preseason. But then you got Damian Harris, who really looked good at times last year, who I believe could emerge as a legit number one back. So, two thoughts, Ryan. First, any final thoughts on how the Sony Michel played out? And second, who's going to end up as the bell cow in this backfield? Will there be one?
That's the number one question, and we go back to fantasy every year. People just stay away from the Patriots backfield because you never know who the number one guy is going to be, and they typically sprinkle in, James White, at Burkhead last year. He had all these guys. Damian Harris kind of became that lead guy. I think Damian Harris will start out as the lead back at the beginning of the year, but I don't think he's going to be a passing back out of the backfield. I think they're going to use Stevenson and Taylor and James White to really come in and mix it up and do a lot of the, kind of checkdowns with James White, those screen passes that makes the Patriots so successful in the past. I don't think the Patriots are going to go away from their playbook when it comes to the type of plays that they want to run. There's going to be a lot of checkdowns for Mac Jones because, again, he is a rookie quarterback. And you're not going to have the Brady to Moss throws that you've seen back in the day and so forth. So I think Damian Harris is your guy in the beginning, but I don't think, Mark, he's going to be able to stay healthy for a full season. And I think you'll start to see Stevenson kind of come out of his – I think Stevenson's going to be a guy you're going to have to look out for throughout the season who could potentially take over the lead back position. But I think for now he's going to be a guy at change of pace that can come in on third down and maybe make that big play for them out of the backfield. Okay,
so perfect, Ryan. So you use the term check down, right, which I completely agree with. So – when you look at what's going to be the biggest couple of factors for the Patriots to be successful this year, obviously the NFL is a quarterback league. You have to have a great quarterback. You can't win. We know that. But, as you and I have talked about, to me, it's going to come down to the tight ends, right? Because Patriots can't stretch the field. Nelson Aguilar, I just want to say it on this show, Nelson Aguilar sucks. And I cannot believe they paid that guy $13 million to come here. And I understand he's going to run up and down the field. But frankly, even if he connects with Mac Jones, if Mac Jones can throw it to him, he's going to drop it. He's going to drop it anyway. So here's my point. When I look at the Patriots' biggest factors for success, aside from Mac Jones, is Mac Jones isn't going to be great. I don't think he's going to be terrible. I think he's going to be a safe quarterback. As the season wears on, he won't make a ton of mistakes. Brian, I think the Patriots season, whether they make the playoffs or not, is directly linked to the health of Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry.
I agree, and I was kind of baffled why they signed Hunter Henry, because they had Jonnu Smith and they gave Henry $37.5 million. So Henry's another guy that I am a fan of that has can be very good, but he gets injured a lot too, and he can be fragile. And Jonnu Smith's already had an injury. Hunter Henry hurt his shoulder in practice, and he's supposedly he's going to be ready for week 1. But, man, we talked about this offline, Mark. If those two guys get hurt, now
it'll be a mess.
Now you're relying on Aguilar and Bourne. Now, listen, I'm a fan of both Aguilar and Bourne. I'm not saying Aguilar is going to be this Julio Jones, which I think they should have went after and tried to do whatever they could to get him, just to have that number one guy that can open up the rest of the field for the other players. But if those two tight ends are gone, then you have defenses saying, okay, let's just focus on Aguilar. Let's shut him down, or we shut Bourne down, one of those two guys. And I think Jacoby Myers is the best wide receiver out of the three those two that we're talking about. I think Jacoby Myers does have kind of comes out of his shell this year and has a really solid season with a better quarterback. But that's one thing that scares me to death is if those two tight ends aren't out there consistently, who else there are you going to throw to? Now, look, you got James White, you got Stevenson, you got Taylor. You have some really good players out there still. I still think they'll be okay. But I'm just kind of disappointed that they didn't go for like a Julio Jones. And people can say all they want about Julio Jones. I know he's faced a lot of injuries every week. It's kind of a questionable tag. He doesn't score a lot of touchdowns. But, man, the guy can stretch the field. He can make big plays. And that's what they really need. And I don't know why they feel the need to nickel and dime the wide receiver position, which I know they've paid up for some guys, but I don't know.
Well, all I'm going to tell you is that, first of all, for those of you who listen to the show who do fantasy, you know how there's certain players on fantasy, it doesn't matter what week of the season is, there's always a red cross next to their name. Hunter Henry defines, he always has a right. Frankly, if Hunter Henry plays a game and doesn't have a red cross next to his name before the game starts, that's nothing short of a miracle. And Ryan, I agree with you. Look, I think Jacoby Myers is a steady. Like in a real team, Jacoby Myers would be a really great number 3 receiver and has the chance, I guess, maybe to emerge to a number 2 in his best day. But look, they've got to stretch the field. I didn't necessarily want them to go after Julio Jones because I don't think that's the Patriots have never invested a lot in receivers because they've always had that short passing game. So I didn't mind, but then again, it was contradicted by getting Aguilar. So I don't know about that.
When you lose a Tom Brady, you need to reinvent the wheel just a little bit. Now listen, I love McDaniels, him and Belichick. They get very creative with their offensive playbook, but when you lose a guy like Tom Brady, you got to think outside the box a little bit. You got to try to find ways to score points. And ever since we had Randy Moss, we've never really had that, kind of threat guy that can kind of beat you right off the line and take it to the, take it to the end zone for a touchdown. So the one thing I wanted to kind of add about the Sony Michel thing, I personally think that they got good value for him. I'm going to tell you why.
I do too.
2 years ago, they won a Super Bowl, correct?
Yep.
Sony Michel went off in the playoffs. I mean, he diced up the Kansas City Chiefs. He had a great stretch of touchdowns and runs in the Super Bowl and the AFC Championship and in the playoff games. So I feel like anytime you win a Super Bowl, you get your money's worth with any guy. So when it's all said and done.
You're saying that was a good first-round pick. Are you serious? Come on.
Well,
because he had a little stretch a few weeks. You and I could have ran against that Chiefs rush defense.
Well, that year they drafted Michel. Couldn't they have taken Nick Chubb instead?
I don't know off the top of my head, but there's no way he lived up to being a first-round pick. He showed spurts. And frankly, what's really sad is that all the reports out of training camp this year where he looked stronger and better than he's ever felt, and he finally may have had the year, and they can't even keep him now, and I do think they got good value. But, Ryan, let's shift to defense for a minute, okay?
Sure.
So one thing the Patriots defense to me has lacked for a long time, going back to even the years of the first 3 Super Bowls they won, is attitude. And this guy, Matthew Judon, I love him. Like, he's bringing attitude. It's being contagious to Kyle Van Noy and Josh Uche and even Hightower. Like, I like Hightower. He's old. I like him. He's a smart player, but he's not an attitude kind of player like a Brewski or a McGinnis or something like that. So, what are your expectations this year with the defense? We're going to see a pass rush, I think, this year that we haven't seen in years. That's going to be so nice. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'm super excited about their defense this year. I think that's going to be their main strength this year is defense. I love the Judon signing, as a linebacker. I also love Hightower. And the one thing about Hightower, he may not be the most, people say where he doesn't show the emotion. But if you watch the Super Bowl when they played the Falcons, he basically, when they were down big, he's like,
oh, he made that play, man.
He's like,
he made that play.
We have to be perfect.
Yeah.
The rest of this game, perfect, no mistakes. And that play he made really set the tone for the rest of that game. So I'm super excited about him and some of the other guys that they're bringing to the table this year on the defense. So I think that's one of their strong points this year that they're really going to kind of really lean on for the team this year. And they know that they have Mac Jones, who maybe is not going to be able to drive them down the field every time. So they're going to be in a lot of these defensive games that I think will suit them well against teams like Miami and so forth. So I'm super excited about the pass rushers that they do have, as well as their secondary too. I mean, I know Gilmore is going to be out for 6 games, but they got some quality guys back there that I think are going to do a fantastic job this year. And they made another trade just recently for another cornerback. So I think they're just kind of preparing for the Stephon Gilmore 6-game absence with those guys. But I think the linebackers is going to kind of take the pressure off a little bit for those guys.
And Ryan, they're fortunate because if Gilmore truly does return after week 6, the most of their games in the first 6 games aren't against great quarterbacks, except Tom Terrific. And I'm just seeing it now, Ryan. I don't want to get too far into this, but I'm just seeing it now. I'm seeing Antonio Brown and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Gronk line up on the line of scrimmage, and the Patriots are going to throw out like Jonathan Jones and I'm like, oh my God, this could get ugly quick. So they'll miss Gilmore in that game, but if Gilmore returns, the harder QBs are again the second half of the season for sure.
Right, that's going to be a very close game. The Patriots and Buccaneers, Week 4. Many think that the Bucs are going to come in and blow the Patriots out. Number one, the Patriots are at home. So that's always going to change to give you a better chance to win with your fans there. And it's going to be a full Gillette Stadium this year too. So that's going to be obviously a game changer there. But I think I'm very interested to see what Belichick devises to throw against Brady. I want to see Brady react against a Belichick defense because Belichick is not going to give Brady a defense he hasn't seen all year. Right? They're sure they're going to scout the Patriots the first 3 weeks. This is going to be a defense that Brady has not seen all year, or maybe when he was with the Patriots. So I think that's going to be a really, really good game. And I think the Patriots defense has a shot to beat the Buccaneers in that game if they put together the right game plan. And obviously we have to score points too. So,
all right, Ryan, last topic on the show. Let's talk about the Patriots' final record. So first off, as far as I'm not going to tell you, our listeners, what the Vegas over-under is for Patriot wins. So give us what you think the Patriots' final record will be and why.
I've been going back between 9-8 and 10-7. I'm going to give the Patriots the benefit of the doubt because of the guys that they've signed this year. They finally invested in a quarterback that I feel can do a good job this year. I don't think it's going to be a great job, but I think it could be a good job. But I like the 2 tight end scenario that they're looking to bring back that they had in the past. I do like the wide receivers they did sign with Bourne and Aguilar, and I like Jacoby Myers a lot too. Plus, they have a ton of depth in the backfield that can create plays and score. So it's not going to be all leaned on these wide receivers to produce like Godwin and Mike Evans and all these other guys. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to say the Patriots are going to finish 10-7 this year. Which
will not be a playoff team. Because 10-7 is not making the playoffs.
10-7 is probably not making the playoffs, but they did add a 7th playoff team this year. So
okay, so Ryan is taking the over, which is 9.5 for Patriot wins.
I am.
And you know, I feel like they could fall anywhere between 8-9 and 11-6. But honestly, I wouldn't bet on this. But I'm taking the under. I feel like they're going to go 9-8. And as we said in the beginning of the show, what it really comes down to is, does Mac Jones look like the quarterback of the future by the end of this year? That should be the barometer all Patriots fans have. So, Ryan, hey, thanks for joining an edition of The Right Call, Talking Pats. And for Ryan Goldney, I'm Mark Altman. We'll see you next time.